consultative process with the community in all the VDs that we have in our community, in our Ward 82. My mission pillars consist of land, consist of health, consist of electricity, welfare and safety, and the most important, which I call the fundamental mission pillar, is called education, which I believe is the fundamental liberator. Because without education, you cannot begin to discuss land. Without education, you cannot begin to discuss health. Without education, we cannot effectively discuss the issues of electricity, nor can we discuss effectively the issues of social welfare and safety. So land is the fundamental, so education is the fundamental liberator. The most important question is, why are we educating you? We are educating you for self-development, for economic development, for community development, and eventually for our country, national and continental development as Africans. Why did I take the step to contest local elections? For I too am an African. I too am a community member who resides in Ward 82. I know the pain of lacking service delivery. I know the pain of lacking quality education. I know the pain of dysfunctional health systems. I know the pain of not having access to our libraries. I know the pain of walking in the streets that are not tarred, walking in the streets that do not have water drainage. I know the pain of living in RDP houses that do not have space. I know the pain of not even having access to sports facilities. But most importantly, I have witnessed the pain of high unemployment rate, especially amongst our young people, the teenage pregnancy high rate, and the drug abuse. Our 5 mission pillars seeks to address the ills of our society in order for us together to restore and rebuild our society, irregardless of which political party you belong to. So education is the fundamental liberator. As I said, it is meant to develop us in every aspect. We eat every day, we wear clothes every day, we travel every day, and we need shelter every day. We switch on our lights on a daily basis. So education fundamentally must address those issues. Education must empower you to manufacture food that you are going to produce food that you are going to eat. Fundamentally, it must empower you to design clothes that you are going to wear. Fundamentally, it must empower you to have access to traveling skills, to be engineers, to deal with logistics, to deal with tourism. And of course, it must ensure that you are able to produce electricity and to ensure that you are able to build houses. We know that the houses that we live in, the schools that we attend, require furniture, they require appliances. So of course, we're going to need carpenters, we're going to need plumbers, and that is what education must address. So education, when we speak of it, we are not only talking about a pen and paper, but we are also addressing consciousness. We access consciousness through internet, through books, but also in schools. So firstly, in Ward 82, we must have access to Wi-Fi so that we are able to learn theoretically what we want to understand, but also to empower ourselves with skills that we wish to have. Secondly, we must have access to libraries. We know that Ward 82 does not have a library at all. But next to us, we have a library that opens around 9 a.m. and closes around 4 p.m. So why is it opening when learners are at school at 9, and by the time it closes, learners are only coming back? So it's open actually for who? So libraries, we must be able to build a library or ensure that the library is open at a conducive time, including weekends. But also education is accessed in schools. So we must ensure that all the schools in our townships, in our ward, are a conducive environment, both for teaching and learning. It is unfair that when you drive past by suburb schools, all you are seeing is beautiful infrastructure. But when you come to township schools, it's like an abandoned old factory that no one can use. So the infrastructure must be conducive for teaching and learning. That is from outside, where sport facilities are proper for all our learners, encouraging them to participate in sports. But we must also have school halls. We know that education is free. So school halls are used for fundraising like theater night, but also so that even our parents, when they attend parents' meeting, they are in a conducive environment. We must also have proper infrastructure that speaks of laboratories for scientific purposes, for technological development. We must also have proper infrastructure like computer centers. When a child goes to tertiary, they must not be shocked what a mouse is. A mouse is not a rat. We are talking about a computer mouse. They must have access to computers so that not only do they have basic skills of computers, but also our learners are able to apply on time for NSFAS. The reason we have long queues of black people when you go to tertiary, it's because we don't have access to computers when we are in our high schools. But also, we must have quality indigenous content that also includes fourth industrial revolution and also skill development in our schools. That is very important. All our schools must have agriculture as a learning program. Almost every township school in my ward, we have 7 schools, they produce what we call feeding scheme. They must be able to take vegetables and fruits from the garden, but also that garden must be used as a skill-based subject. So every learner must know how to plant. That is horticulture under agriculture. We must have access to free sanitary towels. Sanitary towels for girls are not a want, they are in need. It is absurd that our government has introduced condoms for our kids instead of introducing what we call basic needs. And sanitary towels are expensive, which is something they cannot afford. But what we are providing for girls, we must also provide for boys. Whatever their needs are, we must ensure that they have access to those needs. It is important that we monitor the population in all our schools. All 7 schools in my ward are overpopulated. Worse now, we are under COVID-19, where the spread of COVID-19 does not require us to be close to each other. It is yet again unfair that when you go to suburb schools, you find learners in class less than 35. But when you come to township schools, we are over 50. That is unconducive, both for a learner and for a teacher. So we must ensure that population in township school is reduced. We know that also the community members are responsible, especially young people who give kids at a younger age. They are responsible. But as a community, we must work together to ensure that we work with schools, because schools are part of the community, but also ensure that we build what we call a combined school from ECD up to high school to ensure that we reduce population in our schools. We must ensure that we scrap what we call mobile classes. Mobile classes are not conducive. Mobile classes are unsafe. Mobile classes are not serviced in our schools. They are cold when it's cold and they are hot when it's hot. Even teachers cannot teach in mobile classes. We have cases like Halleckstown Secondary School where a learner was electrocuted because a mobile class was not serviced. So we must build proper infrastructure, modern tire classes. It doesn't take long to build a full class, and in fact, it becomes lesser. We must ensure, which is very important, that early childhood development centers are compulsory and also free, both in schools and outside of schools. So in our Ward 82, we must have an early childhood development center that is free and compulsory. There must be no kid that is on the street or in class or at home without access to early childhood development center. Science has proven that a child is socialized into a certain culture between the age of 0 and 12. And if we want to build a future for our community, where we turn our community from a place of slave into a well-developed community, we must ensure that our kids are well taken care of from a young age. The second mission pillar that we deal with is that of land. People always wish to argue that education and land is a national issue. It is not true. Firstly, education is something that is a charity that begins at home. Secondly, land cannot be in the hands of the president when we live in this country as citizens in our own townships. So if I'm a councillor, I'm responsible to build RDP houses. Firstly, I will do that. But I will not build the small RDP houses that they are giving you that do not have space. We must build an RDP house with enough space where you are able to also plant your own gardens at home. But also we must be able to give people who have ability to build their own houses, land, so that they build their own houses. And when we give you land, we are telling you, do not put shacks, because shack is not our African identity. Our forefathers did not have built it. Our forefathers did not have CTM, but they had proper houses. So when we give you land, please put a proper house. We're also going to use land for sports and recreation. It is so sad that we don't have a sport facility in our Ward 82. The only thing we have in Tsakane is the stadium that is now closed. There's so much red tape for you to access it, and in fact it's given to Swallows, a team that does not even belong to Tsakane. So we must ensure that when we build parks, we do not destroy our sport facility. We have a park in Ward 82 that is called Kalkot Lepu Park. Unfortunately, they renovated that park last year, used millions of money to find out that they are putting swings, they are putting gym facilities, but sadly enough and absurd enough, they are putting what we call price stands only. So they are saying, as young people, we are removing the soccer ground that was there. They removed the netball ground that was there. And they are saying to us, sport is not important. Come, chill, play music, drink, and die. So it's important that we use our land for sport and recreation. But it's important that we use our land to build libraries, as I said, under education. We know that we have a pandemic of drugs. So we must use our land to build what we call rehabilitation center and halfway houses. We must destroy the pandemic that is called Nyawope. We are already working together with a company called A Black Dog. We are working with them so that we work with them in schools and outside of schools, where we are able to identify drugs and we are able to reduce the drug intake. But we know that some of our young people are not taking drugs because they want to, but they are frustrated by the system, they are frustrated by the poverty at home, they are frustrated by the education system of one size fits all, and so they are psychologically defeated. And those remain to be our brothers and sisters whom we must help in order for them to stop taking the drug called Nyawope, and we ensure that we don't only take them to rehabilitation centers, but as they come back, we bring them to what we call skill-based. So we must use centers for skill-based programs, both for the people that are coming from the centers, but also for business-driven young people who want to have skills in order to start their own businesses. So we must have a center, not only a center to build offices where people will just bring their laptops and sit, but we must empower them to be able to be carpenters, to be plumbers, but also after that, we must ensure that we inject a smaller Nyana capital so that they are able to start their business. Our third pillar is that of land, of health. We know that Ward 82 does not have a clinic at all, but we are fortunate enough that we have a hospital called Pulusong Hospital. You know that, and you have seen that it's now renovated on the outside, and we give gratitude where it's due. However, we must acknowledge that as you still walk into Pulusong, there are still long queues, there is still bad service. We still have professionals who signed code of conduct that they will give their time, they will give their passion, but they are still giving attitude to patients. So we must work with Pulusong to ensure that there is proper training that is taking place. It is important for us to teach and educate each other that Pulusong Hospital has what we call board of directors, whom out of board directors must consist of community members. What is the process of electing those community members? When do they elect and how often do they elect? That is the information we do not have access to. When I become a councillor, it's important that that information is transparent and we have community members from each and every VD to ensure that there is proper service, to ensure that there is service delivery, also to ensure that there are enough medical services, enough beds and enough medication. But when we speak of health, we must also remind ourselves that we are Africans. So we must plant trees because trees produce oxygen. We must also, in a short term, ensure that we have what we call 24-hour mobile clinics so that we reduce the queues in other clinics outside our wards, so that also we ensure that our elders do not walk a long distance before they get to the clinic. But in the long term, we must ensure that we have a 24-hour full clinic that is not just a mobile clinic. Under health, we must ensure that Currently, our sisters who are responsible to go and do house calls to ensure that our elders get their daily medications, do their jobs effectively and competently so. Our fourth pillar is under electricity. As you may know that currently in Ward 82 we have a serious electricity issue in all VDs. Whether you are served by ESCOM or you are served by municipality. We have problems with corruption where meters are taken out. Yes, because people obviously breached their electricity, but we must look at the core root of why people are breaching electricity. It is due to unemployment, it is due to the high rate of electricity, and we must find ways to help those people. We must also remind our society that we are aware that we have people that are indigent, where you are just a child-headed person, that your parents died, and you are sitting under a house where those debts that your parents carried, they must never fall under you as a child. So you must be able to apply for indigent. As a councillor, I must be able to help you to overcome the red tape that exists currently in those indigent offices. I must highlight that we are aware that our indigent offices in our ward are closed. They were closed under the excuse that it's COVID-19, and now we are on level 2, but they are still closed. So we must find a way to ensure that the offices are open, that the service is competent and well off delivered. But electricity also, we must also highlight that load shedding is a national issue, and when we deal with it, we must deal with it at a level where we deal about load reduction. How do we deal with load reduction? As a councillor, I must be able to inform the community that today there will be load reduction. So appliances will be off from this time to that time, so that load reduction does not happen unexpectedly when I'm sitting with an information and appliances get damaged when people do not have insurances because they are unemployed. So it's important that as a councillor, I become open and transparent to the people that I'm serving. But also, it is important to remind our community and to teach our community that we have different kinds of sources of electricity, of which we can produce electricity through waste. Who is collecting waste in our society? It is the young guys, our brothers and sisters, that are currently taking them, by the ones who are collecting waste and taking them to scrapyards. We have partnered with people who own scrapyards. I can mention Black Diamonds under Brasipo right now, who takes those things. We are doing a program where we take the waste from those guys, but also we must then conscientize them, counsel them about the drug they are taking. Furthermore, we must then train them on how to produce electricity. So we are upskilling them. Our last mission pillar is what we call social welfare and safety. It is important that under social welfare, we know the pressure of water that we have currently. It is due to the fact that our pipes are old. It is due to the fact that we have leakages at our homes and we are not reporting them. And I'm encouraging you to please report each and every water leakage that you experience. So it is important that when I become a councillor, we erect what we call boreholes, so that we do have access to water where we extract water directly from the ground. It is important also that we effectively and we are able to access our ID books and our birth certificates, which is also currently an issue. We have dealt with so many citizens that have a problem with accessing their IDs and their birth certificates, and that falls under social welfare. We must be able to also have access to what we call care centers. This is also in collaboration with skills of entrepreneurship. We must empower our young people, not only to be able to write CVs so that they can be employed, but they must also be able to complete business profiles, to write business plans, to register their businesses, so that when we have a project to build or to maintain a street, we employ them to be main contractors, to be subcontractors, and we remind them that out of the money they are getting, 30% of that money must go to social development, and that includes taking care of our care centers. We have an old police station in Extension 1 where they are taking care of the disabled children, and those 30% should go there to ensure that the disabled are taken care of, the aged are also taken care of. We must have clean environment under our social welfare. Not only do I commit that under my leadership, our environment will be clean, because I want young people not to move to Sandton. They must stay in our society where we become inspirators to the young people. But also I encourage that we also don't litter as responsible citizens in our society. We must reduce crime. We must reduce gender-based violence. How do we do that? We must work together as the community in partnership with street communities. What is the advantage of me contesting elections as an independent? Is the fact that I do not take in any mandate or any instruction from a political party, but I take mandate from the community. As soon as I win, when I win elections, I must come back to the community. The community must elect 10 community members, and it must elect strict committee members who will then ensure that we do not have crime, we do not have gender-based violence. These are my mission pillars that I, together with the community, concluded on. You are welcome to send your comments so that we continue working together. We, together, and I, it's our responsibility to ensure that we are not for Party A that is fighting Party B, nor are we for Party B that is fighting Party A. But we are together as one, irregardless of our political color, to take over in rebuilding and restoring our community. It's our right, it's our voice, and it's our faith. It's our right to vote. Our vote is our voice, and our voice is our faith. For faith is the substance of things hoped for. And after voting and winning, we must then see to it that everything we hoped for, we achieve. Tamaku, aluta continue, till we meet again. Are we out?
Yes.